The blood-red Arizona sunset painted the sky as Fiona Zachary stared at the fresh grave before her, the 20th one she'd dug since arriving in Copper Creek 3 years ago. Death had followed her like a shadow across the frontier, claiming everyone she'd ever cared for. At 24 years old, she'd buried more loved ones than most people did in a lifetime. "Miss Zachary," the undertaker's voice pulled her from her thoughts. "We should head back to town. Coyotes get mighty brave after dark." "In a moment, Mr. Parker." Fiona adjusted her worn black dress, her eyes fixed on the simple wooden cross marking her friend Eliza's final resting place. Consumption had taken her, just as it had taken Fiona's mother and sister years before. "As you wish." The undertaker tipped his hat and retreated to his wagon, leaving Fiona alone with the endless rows of markers that stretched across the dusty cemetery. She knelt, placing a wildflower on the fresh dirt. "Love is nothing but a graveyard," she whispered. "Every time I care, I end up digging another hole." The crunch of approaching boots made her turn. A tall figure stood silhouetted against the dying light, hat in hand, respectfully waiting at a distance. "Cemeteries closed at sundown," she called, rising to her feet. "Begging your pardon, madam." His voice was deep, tinged with a southern drawl. "Just paying respects before heading into town." As he stepped closer, Fiona could make out his features' sun-bronzed skin, eyes the color of a summer storm, and a face that spoke of both hardship and kindness. His clothes were trail-worn but clean, marking him as a traveler. "You're new to Copper Creek," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, madam, Yancy Fletcher." He nodded toward the town. "Looking for work with the cattle outfits. There's nothing for you here but dust and death, Mr. Fletcher." Fiona gathered her shawl around her shoulders. "This town takes more than it gives. Most places do." His gaze drifted over the cemetery. "But some things are worth the risk." Fiona brushed past him. "Nothing's worth the heartache." As she walked away, she felt his eyes on her back, but she didn't turn around. Copper Creek had seen its share of drifters, and they all moved on eventually. This one would too. The following morning, Fiona opened her general store as the sun crested the distant mountains. The bell above the door jangled as her first customer entered, Mrs. Holloway, the banker's wife. "Good morning, Fiona. Terrible business with Eliza," Mrs. Holloway sighed, placing a basket on the counter. "The whole town will miss her cooking at the hotel." "Yes." Fiona busied herself with arranging merchandise. "What can I help you with today?" "Just the usual flour and sugar. And have you heard about the new fellow in town? Quite handsome, they say. Signed on with the Morrison Ranch yesterday." Fiona measured flour into a sack. "I don't keep up with gossip, Mrs. Holloway." "It's hardly gossip. Sheriff Peterson vouched for him. Apparently they served together during the war." The older woman leaned forward. "A respectable man with prospects might be just what you need, dear." "I need nothing of the sort." Fiona tied the flour sack with more force than necessary. "Will there be anything else?" The bell jingled again, and the very man they'd been discussing walked in, removing his hat as he crossed the threshold. "Ladies," he greeted them with a polite nod. "Mrs." Holloway's eyes sparkled with interest. "Why, Mr. Fletcher, we were just talking about you. Nothing too scandalous, I hope." His smile revealed a dimple in his right cheek. "Mrs. Holloway was just leaving," Fiona interjected, handing the woman her purchases. The banker's wife gave a knowing smile. "Indeed I was. Good day to you both." After she left, Fiona turned to Yancy with a businesslike expression. "What can I help you with, Mr. Fletcher?" He placed a list on the counter. "Supplies for the Morrison Ranch." "Mr. Morrison said you'd put it on their account." Fiona scanned the list. "I'll gather these. It may take a few minutes." As she moved about the store collecting items, she felt his gaze following her. Unlike the leering stares she often received from the miners and cowboys who passed through town, his observation seemed more curious than invasive. "Been running this place long?" he asked, breaking the silence. 3 years. She reached for a tin of coffee on a high shelf. He stepped forward. "Allow me." His tall frame easily secured the tin. "Thank you," she said stiffly, taking it from him. 3 years is a fair stretch. You must like it here." Fiona placed the tin with the other items. "It's as good a place as any to make a living, but not to make a life." There was that perceptive gaze again, as if he could see right through her practiced indifference. I don't see how that's any of your business, Mr. Fletcher. She tallied the items on a pad. It's not, he conceded, just making conversation. Well, in Copper Creek, we tend to mind our own affairs. She pushed the supplies toward him. That'll be everything on your list. He gathered the packages. Much obliged, Miss Zachary. The way he said her name gave her pause. How did you know my name? Town this size, news travels fast. He settled his hat back on his head. Especially when it concerns the prettiest shopkeeper in the territory. Before she could respond, he tipped his hat and departed, leaving Fiona staring after him with a mixture of annoyance and something she wasn't ready to acknowledge. Over the next few weeks, Yancy Fletcher became a regular fixture at her store, always arriving with a supply list from the Morrison Ranch and always finding some reason to linger and talk. Despite her initial resistance, Fiona found herself looking forward to his visits, though she'd never admit it aloud. On a particularly hot afternoon in June, the bell announced his arrival once more. This time, he carried something unusual, a small canvas bag in addition to his list. Afternoon, Miss Zachary. He placed both items on the counter, Mr. Fletcher. She nodded, taking the list. More supplies for Morrison? Yes, madam, and a little something else. He pushed the canvas bag toward her. Fiona eyed it suspiciously. What's this? Seeds, he explained. Wildflower seeds from up north. Thought they might brighten up that patch behind your store. She stared at the bag, unsure how to respond. No one had given her a gift, even one so simple, in years. I don't garden, she finally said, never too late to learn. His smile was gentle, without a hint of mockery. My mother always said flowers remind us that beauty can grow anywhere, even in the harshest conditions. That's a nice sentiment, but just take them, he interrupted. Plant them or throw them away, your choice. Against her better judgment, Fiona took the bag. Thank you. As she gathered his supplies, a commotion erupted outside. Shouts and the sound of running feet drew them both to the window. Fire, someone yelled. The livery's on fire. Without hesitation, Yancy rushed out, joining the line of men passing buckets of water from the town well to the blazing structure. Fiona watched from her doorway as the flames reached higher, threatening to spread to neighboring buildings. The town's volunteer firefighters worked desperately, but the dry wood of the old livery stable burned like tinder. Smoke billowed into the clear blue sky, and the panicked whinnies of horses cut through the chaos. The horses are still inside, someone shouted. Before anyone could stop him, Yancy ran toward the burning building, disappearing into the smoke. Fiona's heart lurched into her throat as minutes passed with no sign of him. Just as the roof began to collapse, he emerged, leading 2 terrified horses. He handed them off to waiting hands and turned back toward the inferno. No, Fiona found herself moving forward, but strong arms held her back. Sheriff Peterson, his face grim. It's too dangerous now, Miss Zachary. The structure's failing. As if to confirm his words, a loud crack split the air as a beam gave way. The assembled crowd gasped, certain that anyone inside was lost. Then, impossibly, a figure staggered from the smoke, dragging another person. Yancy collapsed to his knees, coughing violently, while the stable boy he'd rescued was quickly attended to by the town doctor. Without thinking, Fiona broke free of the sheriff's grip and ran to Yancy's side. His face was streaked with soot, and his breath came in ragged gasps. You fool, she whispered, supporting his weight. You could have been killed. His eyes, red-rimmed from smoke, found hers, couldn't leave them. Dr. Wilson appeared beside them. Let's get him to my office. He needs clean air and rest. With the help of several townspeople, they transported Yancy to the doctor's small clinic. Fiona paced outside while Dr. Wilson examined him, her thoughts in turmoil. Why did she care so much what happened to this man? She'd built walls around her heart for good reason. After what seemed like hours, the doctor emerged. He'll be fine. Smoke inhalation and some minor burns, but nothing time won't heal. He's asking for you. Reluctantly, Fiona entered the room. Yancy lay on the examination table, his shirt removed to reveal bandages on his arms and shoulder. The stable boy, he asked hoarsely. He's fine, thanks to you. She stood awkwardly at his bedside. The whole town's calling you a hero. He shook his head weakly. Just did what needed doing. Most men would have thought of their own safety first, not raised that way. He attempted to sit up, wincing. "Lie still," she ordered. "Dr. Wilson says you need rest." "Yes, madam," he settled back, his eyes never leaving her face. "You were worried." It wasn't a question, and Fiona didn't deny it. Only a heartless person wouldn't be concerned, seeing someone run into a burning building. A small smile played at his lips. "I'll take what I can get." Despite herself, Fiona felt an answering smile tug at her mouth. "Rest now, I need to get back to the store." As she turned to leave, his hand caught hers. "Thank you for coming, Fiona." The sound of her given name on his lips sent an unexpected warmth through her. "You're welcome, Yancy." That night, after closing the store, Fiona found herself looking at the bag of wildflower seeds. On impulse, she took a lantern to the small patch of earth behind her store and began to clear away the weeds and stones. The next morning, Fiona visited the doctor's office, bringing a basket of food. She told herself it was merely neighborly concern, the same she would show any injured townsperson. Yet her heart beat faster as she approached his room. Yancy was sitting up, looking considerably better than the day before. His face brightened when she entered. "Miss Zachary." "This is an unexpected pleasure. I brought you something to eat," she said, placing the basket on a small table. "The food here leaves much to be desired. You've had cause to know that?" His eyebrow raised in question. Fiona busied herself arranging the contents of the basket. "I had influenza last winter, 3 days in this very room." "And who brought you food then?" The question caught her off guard. "No one," I managed. Something like understanding passed across his face. "Well, I'm grateful for your kindness." As she unpacked bread, cheese, and a jar of preserves, Dr. Wilson entered. "Ah, Miss Zachary, our patient is doing remarkably well. In fact, he can return to light duties tomorrow." "That's good news," she replied, ignoring the pleased look Yancy sent her way. "Indeed. Though I've advised Mr. Morrison that Mr. Fletcher should avoid strenuous activity for at least a week." The doctor checked Yancy's bandages. "Those burns are healing nicely, but we don't want to risk infection." After the doctor left, an awkward silence fell between them. "I planted the seeds," Fiona finally said. Yancy's face lit up with genuine pleasure. "Did you now? Don't make too much of it," she warned. "It was just, I had some time and the patch needed clearing anyway." "Of course." He tried to suppress his smile but failed. "What kind did you choose to plant?" "All of them. I don't know much about gardening." "Well, I'd be happy to give you some pointers when these bandages come off." Fiona should have refused. It would be the sensible thing to do. Instead, she heard herself say, "I'd appreciate that." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Mr. Morrison, Yancy's employer, coming to check on his injured ranch hand. Fiona took the opportunity to leave, but not before Yancy caught her eye one last time. "I'll see you soon, Miss Zachary." True to his word, Yancy appeared at her store a few days later, moving more stiffly than usual but otherwise recovered. "Mr. Fletcher," she acknowledged him from behind the counter. "Dr. Wilson cleared you for work already." "Light duties only," he confirmed. "Thought I'd come see how those flowers are coming along." After serving her last customer, Fiona led him to the back of the store where she'd planted the seeds. To her disappointment, there was no sign of growth yet. "Nothing's happening," she said, unable to keep the frustration from her voice. Yancy knelt carefully, examining the soil. "Patience, Miss Zachary, good things take time. Perhaps the soil is too poor, or perhaps they're just gathering strength underground before they make their appearance." He stood, brushing dirt from his hands. "Nature has its own schedule. Can't be rushed." "Like most worthwhile things," she murmured. His eyes met hers and something passed between them, an understanding that went beyond words. "Precisely." He cleared his throat. "Now, there's another matter I wanted to discuss. The town's planning a summer social next weekend. A celebration for surviving the fire and to raise money to rebuild the livery." Fiona knew where this was heading and quickly cut him off. "I'll donate goods from the store, of course. I was hoping you might consider attending, with me." She turned away, busying herself with the nearby rain barrel. "I don't attend social gatherings, Mr. Fletcher. Any particular reason? I don't see the point." She faced him again, her expression carefully neutral. "Besides, I'd have no one to watch the store. The social's on Sunday." "Stores closed anyway." He stepped closer. One afternoon, Fiona, what are you afraid of? His use of her first name again made her heart skip, but his question struck too close to home. I'm not afraid, I simply prefer my own company. Yancy studied her for a long moment. I don't believe that. I think you're afraid of caring because you've lost too much already. Fiona felt as if he'd struck her. You know nothing about me. I know more than you think. His voice softened. I've seen how you keep people at arm's length, how you flinch when someone tries to get close. And you think one dance will fix that? Her tone was scathing. No, but it might be a start. He touched her arm gently. Life's about more than just surviving, Fiona. That's easy for you to say, she snapped, pulling away. You haven't buried everyone you've ever loved. As soon as the words left her mouth, she regretted them. Pain flashed across his face before he masked it. Haven't I? He spoke so quietly she almost missed it. My parents, my younger brother, my entire cavalry unit except for Peterson and 2 others. Don't presume to know my losses, Miss Zachary, shame washed over her. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have, it's fine. He straightened, his expression closing off. I'll leave you to your store. Good day. As he walked away, Fiona felt something crumbling inside her. The walls she'd built so carefully were developing cracks. She wanted to call him back to apologize properly, but the words stuck in her throat. That night, she couldn't sleep. Yancy's words echoed in her mind. Life's about more than just surviving. Was that true? For years, survival had been her only goal, keeping the store running, putting food on her table, avoiding the pain of attachment. But lately, she'd begun to wonder if mere existence was enough. The next morning, Fiona was watering her still dormant flower patch when she noticed something, a tiny green shoot pushing through the soil. She knelt for a closer look, marveling at the fragile stem reaching for the sunlight. It was such a small thing, this evidence of life. Yet it filled her with an unexpected hope. If seeds could lie dormant and still find the strength to grow, perhaps the long, buried parts of her heart could do the same. With newfound determination, Fiona closed the store early and made her way to the Morrison Ranch. She'd never visited before, though she'd supplied goods to the operation for years. The sprawling property lay 3 miles outside town, a respectable cattle outfit that employed 12 men. As she approached on her borrowed mare, she spotted Yancy mending a fence light duty as the doctor had ordered. He straightened when he saw her, surprise evident in his posture. Miss Zachary, he called as she dismounted, this is unexpected. I came to apologize properly, she said, tying her horse to the fence post. What I said was unfair and cruel. He set down his tools. No need for apologies, we all speak hastily at times. Nevertheless, I am sorry. She met his gaze directly. And I came to accept your invitation to the social if it still stands. For a moment, he looked genuinely stunned, then a slow smile spread across his face, transforming his features. It stands. Good, she nodded, suddenly awkward. Well, I should get back to town before dark. Wait. He gestured toward the ranch house. At least stay for some coffee. Mrs. Talbot, our cook, would never forgive me for sending you away without refreshment. Against her better judgment, Fiona agreed. The ranch house was comfortable without being ostentatious, reflecting the practical nature of its owner. Mrs. Talbot, a cheerful woman in her 50s, fussed over them, serving coffee and freshly baked biscuits on the wide front porch. Mr. Morrison's in town for the day, Yancy explained as they sat in rocking chairs overlooking the ranch yard. He'd be sorry to miss you. I've known Thomas Morrison for years, but only through business. Fiona sipped her coffee. He seems a fair man, the best employer I've had. Treats his men with respect. Yancy's expression grew thoughtful. He lost his wife about 10 years back, never remarried. Yes, I remember when Sarah passed, the whole town mourned her. They fell into surprisingly easy conversation, discussing the town, the ranch, and eventually more personal matters. As the shadows lengthened, Fiona realized she'd spent nearly 2 hours in his company, longer than she'd conversed with anyone in recent memory. I really should return now, she said, rising reluctantly. Yancy stood as well. I'll escort you. There's no need, it's getting dark, and there've been reports of mountain lions in the area. His tone brooked no argument. I'll saddle up and ride with you. Within minutes, they were heading back to town, the setting sun painting the landscape in gold and crimson. They rode side by side, comfortable in each other's presence. "One of the shoots came up today," Fiona said suddenly, "from the wildflower seeds." The pleasure on Yancy's face was unmistakable. "Did it now? What kind?" "I don't know yet, just a small green stem." "That's how it starts. Before you know it, you'll have a whole garden." He glanced at her. "Sometimes the things we think are dead are just waiting for the right conditions to grow again." The weight of his metaphor wasn't lost on her. Perhaps, as they reached the edge of town, Fiona felt an unexpected reluctance to end their time together. "Thank you for the escort." "My pleasure." He tipped his hat. "I'll see you Sunday then, for the social—" "Yes," she found herself smiling. "Sunday." Over the next few days, Fiona surprised herself by anticipating the social with something approaching excitement. She even went so far as to order a new dress from the dressmaker, nothing extravagant, but a deep blue calico that complemented her auburn hair better than her usual practical browns and grays. When Sunday arrived, she spent more time than usual arranging her hair, pinning it in a simple but becoming style. As she studied her reflection, she hardly recognized the woman looking back. There was color in her cheeks and a brightness in her eyes that had been absent for years. The knock at her door came precisely at 2 o'clock. Yancy stood on her porch in his Sunday best, a clean white shirt, dark vest, and polished boots. He'd trimmed his beard and slicked back his hair, and the effect was quite striking. "Miss Zachary." His appreciative gaze took in her appearance. "You look beautiful." Fiona felt a blush rise to her cheeks. "Thank you, you're quite presentable yourself." He offered his arm with a smile. "Shall we?" The town square had been transformed for the occasion. Lanterns hung from ropes strung between buildings. Tables laden with food lined one side, and a platform had been erected where local musicians played lively tunes. It seemed the entire population of Copper Creek had turned out, eager for respite from their daily struggles. As they entered the square, heads turned. Fiona rarely attended social functions, and her appearance with Yancy caused a stir of interest. Mrs. Holloway was the first to approach, her expression delighted. "Fiona, Mr. Fletcher, how wonderful to see you both." She winked not so subtly at Fiona. "The whole town's talking about our hero. You've caught yourself a fine one, dear." "Mrs. Holloway, you misunderstand," Fiona began, but the woman had already moved on to greet other arrivals. Yancy's eyes crinkled with amusement. "Would it be so terrible being caught with me?" Fiona found herself returning his smile. "I suppose there are worse fates." The afternoon passed in a pleasant blur. They ate barbecued beef and cornbread, bid on items at the charity auction, and watched children race in sack contests. Throughout it all, Yancy remained attentive but not possessive, introducing her to the ranch hands she knew only as customers and making sure she was comfortable. As the sun began to set, the band struck up a waltz. Couples moved to the dance area, and Yancy turned to Fiona with an outstretched hand. "May I have this dance?" She hesitated only briefly before placing her hand in his. "I'm afraid I'm out of practice. Just follow my lead." His hand at her waist was gentle but firm as he guided her through the steps. Fiona had last danced at her sister's wedding, 6 years and a lifetime ago. Yet her body remembered the rhythm, and soon they were moving in harmony across the makeshift dance floor. "You dance beautifully," he murmured, close to her ear. "My father insisted all his daughters learn." The memory brought a pang, but not the usual crushing grief. "He said a woman should know how to dance even if she lives on the frontier." A wise man, he was. She met Yancy's gaze. "He would have liked you." Something shifted between them in that moment, an acknowledgement of feelings neither had put into words. As the music swelled, Yancy drew her slightly closer, and Fiona didn't resist. When the dance ended, they found themselves at the edge of the square, away from the crowd. The lanterns cast a golden glow over everything, softening the harsh lines of the frontier town. "Thank you for coming with me tonight," Yancy said softly. "Thank you for asking." She took a deep breath. "I've enjoyed myself more than I expected." His smile was tender. "Does that mean you might consider doing this again sometime?" Before she could answer, a commotion arose from the direction of the saloon. Raised voices turned to shouts, and then came the unmistakable sound of a gunshot. The music stopped abruptly. Women gathered children close while men moved toward the disturbance, Yancy among them. Fiona followed, fear clutching at her heart. In front of the saloon, two men faced each other, one a local cattle hand named Jenkins, the other a stranger with a smoking revolver. Between them lay Sheriff Peterson, clutching his shoulder, blood seeping between his fingers. "Drop the gun, mister," ordered Thomas Morrison, who had stepped forward, his own weapon drawn. He drew first, snarled the stranger, but he lowered his pistol. Two men helped the sheriff to his feet while others disarmed the gunman. Dr. Wilson pushed through the crowd to examine Peterson's wound. "Clean shot through the shoulder," he announced. "Need to get him to my office." "What happened?" Yancy asked Jenkins. "Caught this fella cheating at cards," the ranch hand explained. "Sheriff tried to calm things down and this snake pulled his gun." As they spoke, Fiona noticed the stranger's eyes darting around, calculating. She'd seen that look before on desperate men. "Yancy," she warned, but it was too late. The man lunged, grabbing a nearby woman and pressing a hidden derringer to her temple. People scattered, screaming. "Nobody move," he shouted. "I'm riding out of here or she dies," the woman, young Sally Reed, who worked at the hotel, whimpered in terror. The crowd froze, weapons half raised, no one willing to risk the girl's life. "Take it easy," Yancy said, stepping forward with his hands raised. "No need for anyone else to get hurt. Stay back." The man's eyes were wild now. "I need a horse now. You can have mine," Yancy offered calmly. "It's hitched right over there. Just let the girl go." "I'm not stupid. She's my insurance." The man began edging toward the hitching post, dragging Sally with him. Fiona watched in horror, helpless as the situation unfolded. Then she noticed Yancy's subtle hand signal to Morrison and the other ranch hands. They were planning something. "My horse is saddled and ready," Yancy continued, moving parallel to the gunman, drawing his attention. "Good animal, won't give you any trouble." The distraction worked. As the man glanced toward the horses, Morrison crept closer from behind. In one fluid motion, Yancy lunged forward while Morrison grabbed the man's gun arm. Sally broke free with a scream, and within seconds, the would-be escapee was subdued, face pressed into the dirt by several townsmen. "Are you hurt?" Fiona rushed to Yancy's side, checking for injuries. "I'm fine." He squeezed her hand reassuringly, just doing what needed doing. Again, the crisis averted, the social began to disperse. The festive mood had been shattered, and families drifted homeward, discussing the excitement in hushed tones. Yancy walked Fiona back to her store in silence, both processing what had happened. At her door, she turned to face him. "That was very brave and very foolish," he shrugged. "Couldn't let him hurt that girl. You could have been killed." The words came out sharper than intended, betraying her fear. "But I wasn't." His gaze softened. "You were worried about me again." Fiona couldn't deny it. "Yes, I was." Yancy took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "Does that scare you? Caring what happens to me terrifies me," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. He stepped closer. "Fiona, the moment was interrupted by a shout from down the street. Fletcher, Morrison wants all hands back at the ranch." "That gunman had friends and they've been spotted heading this way," Yancy cursed under his breath. "I have to go, I understand." She withdrew her hand reluctantly. "This isn't over," he promised, his eyes intense. "We'll finish this conversation," she nodded. "Be careful." With a last lingering look, he joined the other ranch hands gathering in the street. Fiona watched until he disappeared from view, her emotions in turmoil. Sleep eluded her that night. She paced her small rooms above the store, torn between hope and fear. Hope that what she felt growing between her and Yancy might flourish. Fear that if it did, she would ultimately lose him too. Dawn found her in the garden patch, checking on her seedlings. Several more had sprouted overnight, tiny green promises pushing through the earth. She touched one gently, marveling at its tenacity. The store remained quiet that day. Word had spread about the gunman's friends, and most people stayed home, doors locked. By closing time, Fiona had served only a handful of customers and heard no news from the Morrison ranch. As she was securing the shutters, a rider approached at a gallop. Her heart leapt, thinking it might be Yancy, but it was young Billy Watson from the telegraph office. "Miss Zachary," he called, reining in his horse. "Message from the Morrison ranch. They caught those outlaws trying to rustle cattle. There was a gunfight, but our boys won." Relief flooded through her. "Was anyone hurt?" Mr. Morrison got nicked in the arm and one of the hands took a bullet to the leg. Doc Wilson rode out to tend them. What about Yancy Fletcher? She asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Billy scratched his head. Didn't hear his name mentioned. Guess he's fine. After the boy left, Fiona paced her store, debating whether to ride out to the ranch herself. Before she could decide, the bell over the door jingled. Yancy stood in the doorway, dusty and tired but whole. Without thinking, Fiona rushed to him, stopping just short of throwing her arms around him. "You're all right," she breathed. "Takes more than a few two-bit outlaws to keep me down." His smile was weary but genuine. Though it was a near thing once or twice, she ushered him to a chair. "Sit, you look exhausted." He sank into the seat gratefully. "Been in the saddle since dawn. Morrison sent me to town to report to the sheriff's deputy, and he looked up at her, I had to see you." Fiona's heart hammered in her chest. "Can I get you something? Water? Coffee? Just you?" He caught her wrist gently as she moved past. "Fiona, when bullets were flying today, all I could think about was getting back to you, to finish what we started last night." She stood frozen, caught between flight and surrender. "Yancy, I know you're scared." He rose, still holding her wrist. "I know you've lost people, so have I, but shutting yourself away isn't living, it's just existing. And if I let myself care for you, only to lose you too." Her voice trembled. "I don't think I could bear it. None of us knows what tomorrow brings." He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. "But I'd rather have one day in the light than a lifetime in the shadows." Her resistance crumbled. "I've been in the shadows so long, I'm not sure I remember how to step into the light. Let me show you." His hand came up to cup her cheek. One day at a time, when his lips met hers, it was like awakening from a long sleep. Gentle at first, then deepening as she responded, the kiss spoke of promises and possibilities. Fiona felt the walls around her heart truly begin to crumble, making way for something new to grow. In the weeks that followed, Copper Creek buzzed with the news of Fiona Zachary stepping out with Yancy Fletcher. They were seen riding together on Sundays, sharing meals at the hotel restaurant, and tending the flourishing wildflower garden behind her store. The flowers had bloomed spectacularly vibrant purples, yellows, and reds, transforming the once barren patch into a riot of color. Fiona found herself spending evenings there, marveling at the beauty that had emerged from such tiny seeds. One evening in late July, she was watering the flowers when Yancy arrived, a mysterious smile playing on his lips. "I have something to show you," he announced. "Can you close the store for the rest of the day?" Intrigued, Fiona agreed. They rode out of town, following the river north. After about an hour, Yancy led her up a small rise to a clearing overlooking the water. There, to her astonishment, stood a half-built cabin. "What is this?" she asked, dismounting. "My claim." He helped her down, his hands lingering at her waist. "Filed the paperwork last month. 160 acres with water rights." Fiona walked toward the cabin, taking in the solid foundation and partially framed walls. "You're leaving the Morrison Ranch come spring, yes?" He followed her. "Mr. Morrison has been generous enough to let me work on this during my free time. Some of the other hands have helped too." "It's a good piece of land," she observed, looking out over the rolling terrain dotted with cottonwoods. "But why show me now when it's not finished?" Yancy took a deep breath as if gathering courage. "Because I want you to have a say in how it's built. I want it to be a home you'd be happy in." The implication of his words sent her heart racing. "Yancy, I know it's soon," he said quickly. "We've only known each other a few months, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life." He took her hands in his. "I love you, Fiona Zachary. I think I've loved you since I first saw you in that cemetery, so fierce and broken and beautiful. I want to build a life with you if you'll have me." Tears filled her eyes, not of sorrow, but of a joy so unexpected and complete it overwhelmed her. "I've been alone so long," she whispered. "I never thought I'd find someone who could make me want to risk my heart again. And now," his expression was hopeful but uncertain, "now I know that loving you is worth any risk." She squeezed his hands. "Yes, Yancy Fletcher, I'll help you build this home and I'll share it with you." His smile was radiant as he pulled her into his arms, lifting her off her feet in his enthusiasm. When he set her down, his expression grew serious again. "There's something else." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small object. "This was my mother's. I've carried it with me since she died, waiting for the right person." In his palm lay a simple gold band set with a small pearl. "Fiona Zachary, will you marry me?" For a woman who had once believed love was nothing but a graveyard, the question should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. "Yes," she said simply. "I will." The wedding took place in October when the aspens turned gold and the air carried the first hint of winter. The entire town attended, the same people who had once whispered about the standoffish widow now celebrating her happiness. They exchanged vows in the town church, with Sheriff Peterson recovered from his wound, standing as Yancy's best man and Mrs. Holloway serving as Fiona's matron of honor. The bride wore blue, with wildflowers in her hair, blooms from the very garden that had marked the beginning of her heart's reawakening. By Christmas, the cabin was finished, a cozy haven with a stone fireplace and wide windows that captured the spectacular mountain views. Fiona sold her store to a young couple from back east, though she continued to help them learn the business throughout the winter. Spring brought new beginnings. They moved to their homestead permanently, planting crops and starting a small herd of cattle. Yancy built a fence around a generous plot behind the cabin, and together they planted a garden far larger than the one behind the store, vegetables for sustenance, but also flowers, row upon row of vibrant blooms that danced in the mountain breezes. On warm evenings, they would sit on their porch, watching the sunset paint the distant peaks. During one such twilight, Fiona rested her head on Yancy's shoulder, her hand absently stroking her slightly rounded belly. "I used to think love was a graveyard," she murmured. "A place where hope went to die." Yancy covered her hand with his own. "And now," she smiled, looking out over their flourishing garden, "now I know it's more like these flowers. It needs care and patience, and sometimes it has to weather storms. But with the right nurturing, it can bloom even in the harshest places." He kissed her temple gently. "I told you flowers could grow anywhere. You did." She turned to face him, her eyes shining with the love she no longer feared. "Thank you for showing me that my heart wasn't barren ground after all, just dormant, waiting for the right gardener." As the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, Fiona Zachary Fletcher knew with absolute certainty that whatever the future held, joy or sorrow, abundance or hardship, she would never again face it alone. Like the wildflowers that had started their journey, she had found her way back to the light, learning that even in a graveyard, with enough love and patience, new life could always find a way to grow. 2 years later, their homestead had flourished beyond their expectations. The modest cattle operation had grown, their crops yielded bountifully, and their cabin had expanded to accommodate their growing family. Their daughter, Elizabeth Sarah Fletcher, had just celebrated her first birthday, and the joy she brought to their lives seemed to multiply with each passing day. The wildflower garden had spread, naturalized across the gentle slope behind their home, creating a tapestry of colors that changed with the seasons. Fiona had become known in the region for her knowledge of native plants, often providing remedies and advice to neighbors and travelers alike. One summer afternoon, as Yancy returned from checking the fences, he found Fiona in the garden with Elizabeth, teaching the toddler the names of different blooms. The sight of them, his wife's auburn hair now streaked with a few strands of silver, his daughter's chubby hands reaching for a bright yellow flower, filled his heart to bursting. "And what do we call this one?" Fiona was asking, pointing to a purple coneflower. "Purple," Elizabeth declared triumphantly. "That's right, sweetheart, purple." Fiona looked up as Yancy approached. "Look who's home, Lizzie." "Papa!" The little girl scrambled to her feet and ran to him with the wobbling determination of the very young. Yancy swept her into his arms, breathing in the sweet scent of her hair. "How's my flower today? We're learning our colors," Fiona explained, rising to greet him with a kiss. "Though I think purple and yellow are the only ones that have stuck so far," he settled Elizabeth on his hip. "Smart as her mother, she'll be running this place before she's 10. Heaven help us." Fiona laughed, tucking a stray strand of hair behind her ear. "How are the fences?" "Holding well. No sign of that mountain lion the Hendersons reported." He looked toward the western ridge. "Storm coming, though. We should get inside soon." As if on cue, a distant rumble of thunder rolled across the valley. They gathered Elizabeth's toys and headed for the cabin, reaching the porch just as the first fat raindrops began to fall. Inside, their home was warm and welcoming, pine floors polished by use. Curtains Fiona had sewn from fabric ordered from Denver. Furniture Yancy had crafted with his own hands. On the mantel above the fireplace sat treasured mementos. A photograph of Yancy's parents, a Bible that had belonged to Fiona's family, and a small jar containing the first wildflower seeds that had changed everything. While Fiona prepared supper, Yancy entertained Elizabeth with stories, his deep voice rising and falling dramatically as he described the adventures of clever rabbits and wise old bears. Their daughter listened, wide-eyed, occasionally interjecting with enthusiastic but incomprehensible comments. "She has your gift for storytelling," Fiona observed as she set the table, "and your stubbornness," he countered with a grin. "Tried to put her down for a nap earlier and you'd have thought I suggested she swim the Mississippi." "Determination," Fiona corrected primly. "A valuable quality in a woman." The rain intensified, drumming on the roof and streaming down the windows. After they had eaten and put Elizabeth to bed, Yancy built a fire against the growing chill. They sat before it, Fiona's head resting in his lap as he stroked her hair. "Letter came from Sheriff Peterson today," he mentioned. "Says Copper Creek's growing. They're talking about building a proper school next year. About time. The town's been using that converted storeroom for too long." She looked up at him. "Did he mention the railroad rumors?" Yancy nodded. "Says surveyors were through last month. If it comes, everything will change. For better or worse. Both, I expect." His fingers continued their gentle journey through her hair. More people, more opportunity, also more trouble, most likely. Fiona was silent for a moment, considering. "Do you ever regret leaving town, setting up out here where it's so isolated?" "Not for a second." His answer came without hesitation. "Everything I want is right here." A particularly loud thunderclap made them both start. In the next moment, a wail rose from Elizabeth's room. "I'll go," Fiona said, rising quickly. She returned moments later with their daughter, who was clutching her favorite blanket and looking wide-eyed at the storm raging outside. "Someone doesn't appreciate nature's music," Yancy observed, opening his arms to receive the frightened child. "Loud," Elizabeth complained, burying her face against his chest. "It is loud," he agreed, rocking her gently, "but it's also helping all your flowers grow. The rain is giving them a nice big drink." This perspective seemed to interest her. She peeked toward the window, flowers drinking. "That's right. And tomorrow they'll be even prettier because of it." Satisfied with this explanation, Elizabeth settled between her parents, her fear forgotten as Yancy began to sing softly, an old lullaby his mother had sung to him. Before long, her eyelids grew heavy and she drifted back to sleep. "She trusts you completely," Fiona whispered, watching their daughter's peaceful face. "When you tell her something, it becomes her truth. A responsibility I don't take lightly." He kissed the top of Elizabeth's head. "I want her to grow up knowing she's safe and loved, but also understanding that storms pass. That difficult times make the good ones sweeter. Like her stubborn mother had to learn." Fiona's tone was light, but her eyes held the memory of her former self, the woman who had given up on joy. "You weren't stubborn, you were protecting yourself the only way you knew how." He reached for her hand. "But you were brave enough to try again, that's what matters." Outside, the storm began to abate, the spaces between thunderclaps growing longer, the rain softening to a gentle patter. Fiona carefully lifted Elizabeth. "I'll put her back to bed." When she returned, Yancy was standing by the window, looking out at the rain-washed darkness. She wrapped her arms around him from behind, resting her cheek against his back. "Penny for your thoughts, Cowboy." He turned in her embrace. "I was thinking about the first time I saw you, standing alone in that cemetery. You looked so fierce and so broken at the same time. I wanted to know your story, and now you're part of it." She smiled up at him. "The best part." "Do you ever think about how different things might have been if I hadn't come to Copper Creek? If our paths had never crossed?" Fiona considered the question. "I think I would have continued existing rather than living, running the store, keeping to myself, watching life happen to other people." She shook her head. "It's hard to imagine now, for me too." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. Sometimes I think it wasn't chance that brought me there, that somehow we were meant to find each other. The romantic cowboy, she teased gently. Who would have guessed? Only with you, he assured her, bending to kiss her softly. Only ever with you. As the rain tapered to a stop and moonlight began to filter through breaking clouds, Fiona Zachary Fletcher knew she had found not just love, but home not in a place, but in a person who had shown her that even in a heart she had thought barren, beautiful things could grow with patience and care. Their life wasn't perfect. There would be droughts and storms, losses and challenges. But there would also be joy and laughter, growth and renewal, a garden of experiences tended together, season after season, for all the years that stretched before them. And that, she decided as Yancy led her to bed, was the most beautiful flower of all.